Now, there's many, many things that are like synchronicities that are at work in our lives, though some people put a lot of focus on synchronicity. I remember Jeffrey Kripal, his current scholar of religion that is currently prominent, distinguished scholar of religious studies. He said, "I don't believe in anything anymore, except I do believe in synchronicity." So that's a skeptical but alert postmodern sensibility. Like, something's happening here. There's patterns of meaning that are cohering in my life that shouldn't be happening if I lived in an utterly random universe. So synchronicity does have a certain pride of place, but so also are all the great, say, psychedelic, shamanic, initiatory experiences that people are going through with ayahuasca or with LSD or at Burning Man, and then you have the powerful reconnections to somatic experience that has very much been part of our time since the 1960s in particular. One could list many other vision quest experiences of the spiritual dimension returning to human experience through in-depth experiences of the wilderness and nature. Many ways in which this situation is changing, and in some sense one could say we seem to be at a kind of midpoint between this kind of post-Nietzschean, post-Copernican, postmodern descent of the self into the underworld, into the night sky, into the unconscious, the crucible of initiatory transformation, just the opposite of that all is clear, transcendent light of an earlier religious epiphany. And we seem to be now reconnecting to an anima mundi, a sacralized world, a world that has meanings and purposes that are larger than us, but that inform us and that we can even participate in some sense in. And this diagram here, which very gradually emerged over the last 15 years. First I was just sort of comparing these two things, and then I was putting in the modern and the primal, and then bringing in that, and then describing and I realized this is really a mandalic structure that tends to emerge, as Jung pointed out, in people's consciousness as they go through a profound psycho-spiritual transformations out of chaos, out of pathology, out of fragmentation, out of the dark night of the soul. There starts to emerge first polarities that move into a tension of opposites that bring forth a third, and then he said you tend to see the emergence of quaternities. The circle, the spiral, the four, the square and the circle together, time and eternity, up and down, left and right, and one finds a center by taking in the whole. And I think what has happened, I mean, all of these stages here are in some sense present in all of us today and in our world today. I mean, there are people who are speaking directly from an axial religion, dualism, and transcendent confidence in biblical religion, for example. There are people who are representing this, the Richard Dawkins, the Bertrand Russell, the Christopher Hitchens kind of consciousness. There are people who are in various stages of this postmodern deconstruction, who are very prominent in the academic world, in contemporary art, etc. There are people who are very much, there's primal cultures that are still carrying this, and there are people who are in our world who are reconnecting to this in a deep way. I believe that we have the possibility now of reconnecting to this larger anima mundi, but in a new way. It's not just, the idea is not simply to rediscover it or recover it, it's to forge a new relationship to it that evolves organically out of the whole, that owns this history, that does not simply cut it off as being an ignoble epistemological error, but that it is in some sense an essential part of the whole because it happened. If we do believe that everything is ultimately one, everything expresses the divine cosmic whole, then that's true also of modernity. It's true of this incredible experiment that's happening on this earth. And what I've been trying to set out here today is a kind of a vision that would, in some sense, acknowledge the spiritual potential of this this heroic trajectory. And really this is a solar journey, and it's a solar heroic journey. But the problem with the solar heroic impulse as it's been understood for so long is one of just focusing on the ascent, onward and upward, the bright, transcendent, individual consciousness and so forth. And it's left out the fact that an essential part of the heroic arc is the descent. It's the going down, it's going under, into the lunar ground, into the matrix of being, into the larger whole, into the night sky where many lights shine, not just the one brilliant solar light, but all the stars and planets. And that's ruled by the moon, which in some sense is the great symbol of the whole, of the psychosomatic ground of being. You know, in astrology, the sun is the personal identity, your sense of the shining individual self and will, how you define yourself, while the moon is who you are before you even think about who you are. And it's the ground of your being. It's the night sky with where you can see the larger cosmos, the deep cosmos, and the more mysterious relationship of light and dark, and of cycles, and of many truths, many lights, not just the one. So in some sense what I'm pointing to here is a kind of alchemical solar-lunar conjunctio oppositorum, a conjunction of opposites, a sacred marriage, a heros gamos. Rather than just negating it as being, like, let's say, rather than negating any one of these stages as being just a mistake or a catastrophic mistake, it's and catastrophe and shadow is a huge part of the story. I have wanted to emphasize that I think there's a tragic dimension to history. But I believe that tragedy can be, that the nature of the divine that is at work in the cosmos and in us, that is the cosmos and us at its deepest level, is so, the magnitude of its capacity for the good is such that it can take any fall and bring that into a larger good than would otherwise have been possible, and that our births each of our births represents a symbol of that. We have to fall from the womb. We have to fall from the unitive state of undifferentiated interconnection with the maternal matrix of our being in order to be born. We have to be expelled from the garden. That's the great Christian mystical idea of O Felix Culpa, O blessed sin, O happy fault, that makes possible this larger reunion of the divine and the human that permits an incarnation to take place and a new level of divine consciousness to emerge through this great struggle of history. So it's an integration, and perhaps the best. There's one little sentence in a letter that I'll end with here. A letter from Jung talking about. He was talking particularly about the challenge of the psychological path, and he said, if the apprentice piece of psychological development is the encounter with the shadow, the masterpiece, and the most difficult is he felt, was the encounter with the anima. Now he was talking, as he often did, about his own psychology and his own, and in a way, the challenge of the masculine psyche. All of us have to encounter and assimilate, integrate our shadow, and that's a huge part of the task that Socrates and the Hebrew prophets and St. Paul, etc., Augustine, they were all focused on that. The facing of the shadow, and Jung brought a whole new level of comprehension of that. Octavio Paz, the great Mexican poet, said, it would not be an exaggeration. All the ills that face our civilization, the solution to all the ills that face our civilization, the remedy, that was the word used, is the examination of conscience and the remorse that accompanies it, which is a legacy of Christianity, you could have said, of the whole ethical monotheistic tradition that comes out of the Abrahamic religions. And that this has been and will continue to be the sole most powerful remedy for the ills that face our civilization. So that's the facing of the shadow. And we are having to do that with respect to our human civilization's impact on the earth, on the larger earth community. That's just a huge shadow that is coming up with tremendous force, like the Gulf oil spill, or the Russian catastrophic fires, or the Pakistani catastrophe of flooding and so forth. But in addition, it's not only the shadow. Jung said beyond that, it's the anima. And if we understand the anima as the anima mundi, the soul of the world, and it's the encounter with the deeper archetypal unconscious and the ensouled world, the whole, that this part, the human solar self, has to go through a transformative encounter with in order to give birth to a new solar lunar sacred marriage child. That's I think the sacred possibility of our time while we hover on the edge of catastrophic collapse. And that's our moment in history. All right, that's I went past our time, but that gives you some idea of some of the ideas that are gestating in this PCC community. Thanks a lot.